a podcast to honor the gods.
This better come with a sacrifice.
Dave X Media.
Hello and welcome to Content and Capable, a podcast all about following your passions while still feeling like a proper adult. My name's Sam and I'm your host. This week I spoke with Tamara all about her experience using social media as a teacher. Well, welcome to Content and Capable, Tamara. It's lovely to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, I don't. For context, I have a job interview like a little bit after this, and I don't know whether I'm more nervous about seeing you or doing my job interview.
Oh gosh, I'm definitely not worth being nervous over.
Well, it's like I do job interviews fairly regularly. Like it's not something that I'm not used to, but speaking to people, I think this is the beauty of things like Content and Capable is you only get to speak to people, once, twice, three times, and you get these really, interesting like time capsules of their life at that time, and a conversation about what they're feeling and what they're going through at that particular time. And it is so fascinating. I've listened back to like a couple of episodes recently, and it's just really interesting to hear, especially people I'm now good friends with, talk about their lives. And then I think about how different their life is now. It's fascinating. For those who may have not recognized your voice, where would have people seen you on the internet?
Probably on TikTok on a little channel that I have called Teaching Mrs. H. That would be on the internet, mostly where people would find me. But generally day to day, people find me in my classroom with my students. So.
Yes. And why did you jump on TikTok to start with?
Believe it or not, it was a dare.
My
own children. Yeah. So I'm a mom of five kids. And I had an Instagram account. It really wasn't going anywhere. But I would post silly stuff on Instagram a lot. And I had posted a video on Instagram that went nowhere, like no views. But my kids are like, Mom, this is funny. You should put it on TikTok. So I legitimately downloaded TikTok at like 10 o'clock at night, uploaded the video, and then put my phone down and didn't think about it for a couple weeks. And when I picked up my phone again, I was like, oh, I should check that TikTok video and see what it did, expecting like 1, 2, maybe 15 views. And it was well over 10,000. And it was just kind of, and I had 5,000 followers from it, right? Like it was insane. And that's just kind of where the journey started. So
that's fascinating. Have you ever dealt with those kind of like large numbers viewing either you or a project you've worked on directly before?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm a second career. So I didn't start teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I started as a vice president of sales. Well, I started in sales and ended as a vice president of sales.
Yeah.
So I was pretty used to talking to big groups of people, creating content that would go out on like different places and people would view it, but it was all usually in a very controlled environment, within our company intranet work or whatever. So yeah, I'm used to thousands of people seeing my stuff, but they've kind of been forced to watch it.
Yeah.
It wasn't by choice.
And like when you did discover that your video had been viewed so many times, what was, I don't know, yours and your family's reaction, especially because, as you said, it's such an uncontrolled environment?
I gained a lot of teacher friends very quickly, teacher followers. And my kids are like, see, Mom, I told you it was funny. Like people would resonate with it, right? Because, kids like to be right. But what was funny is as I continued to post and videos continued to get like that kind of following and that kind of reaction, kind of surreal. I never expected to be, and I still don't think of myself as somebody who is like internet famous or TikTok famous. My daughter describes it, I'm TikTok popular. I'm TikTok popular. But the reaction has just been, sometimes it's, oh, grown mom's making another TikTok, and sometimes it's like, hey mom, we have an idea, we think you should do XYZ. So it's become kind of a fun family thing.
Yeah. It's fascinating because it is one of those things that, like, filming a video is not a subtle thing. I find it really hard. Like, I see people all the time subtly taking videos, but I find it really hard myself to, like, subtly take videos. And especially when it's about, your personality or your job or your face in general, it's really hard to, like, get, is this going to how am I supposed to do this in a way that isn't going to be, like, interrupting everyone else around me and annoying people theoretically. And it is fascinating that, especially your kids as well, like, they're on board with it, which is a fascinating thing, because not even my siblings, I think, would be on board with with me on TikTok. Actually, I know that, and I think my brother, who's in the room beside me at the moment, could verify that he doesn't like the fact that I'm on TikTok.
I use it because I teach grade 12.
Yeah.
And I use it a little bit as clout. Although I did find out today that one of my students has about 20,000 followers more than me. So
how rude.
So we're going to have to fix that. But no, I feel like with the videos, especially, part of being on TikTok is not necessarily curating a personality or curating an image of yourself, but really just putting yourself out there as you are. And a lot of times, friends of mine at work here will be like, well, I don't believe that you have I can't believe you have the time to film all those videos. Listen, if I can't film it, edit it, and post it in 5 minutes, it's not going up. Right? Like, I'm not going to spend the time to do it. And even my really big ones, like I did Macbeth in 60 seconds. Yeah. That one took me about 35 minutes to do. Yeah. Right? So if it's going to take a good chunk of my day, then the video is just not worth it to me. I don't feel like that's being authentic. So
yeah, that's really fascinating. I'm so glad, like, someone else is like, if this takes more than 5 minutes, I'm not, it's not worth my time and effort, because I always go, I wonder if I, like, put, like, an extra, 2 hours into, making content for TikTok, that I would be somehow more successful, when that is just by no means the factor of success on social media at the moment. I don't know. It's very fascinating that we do now have that, like, if it's not going to be easy to produce, there's no point in producing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sorry, while you were doing this, had you started your masters at this point? Was this when you were still deciding on your topic for your masters, or was this well before that?
That was well before that. So this is about a year before. Well, let's see, I'd say it's a few months before I started my master's program in general.
Mm-hmm.
And then about a year and a half before I decided on my research topic for my final project. So I was very well deep in the trenches of TikTok before I decided to use it as a final thesis.
And, like, I've definitely heard you talk about it on TikTok, but what was, your thesis, and how did it involve TikTok?
I actually had 2 projects, and my final thesis, I didn't necessarily, so my master's program involved an applied project and not necessarily a thesis per se. Mm-hmm. But I had to answer 2 questions in 2 different classes, 2 major final applied projects, right? The one was, can I create a sense of community using social media alone? So that was one where we created the Discord and brought people in and asked questions. And sadly, that Discord, I've not been in it for months because I've been so busy. But the other one was using TikTok as a form of experimental narrative, and seeing if I could, what was it? It was creating an experimental narrative, seeing if I could condition the viewers to expect a certain type of content from me, which is where the 60-second stories came from. So I would create a 60-second story, and the story would be about something completely one topic, and then in the last few lines of it, I would change the topic and the narrative of the story, which kept people online for the full 60 seconds watching the full video. They became conditioned to the fact that I was going to change the narrative. So it was fun. It was a fun project.
What was some of the what was some of the findings that you discovered while you were kind of, experimenting and trying to answer these questions through your masters?
So the experimental narrative class was actually the one that I really enjoyed the most. And one of the things that I did find that, especially in social media, is that you can condition people to expect a certain thing from you. But also there's the big argument about on social media, do I need a niche? Do I need to niche down to one specific thing? I have a follower of teachers, mostly teachers. And I did notice that in my stories, that any stories that were related to education did exponentially better than stories that were related to like my family or my relationship with my husband or whatever. Stories that were relating to teaching would go viral, like instantly, upwards of 150,000 views, right?
Yeah.
Where stories that were just me and my husband or just general relationship or my family or whatever, they would stay below 10,000. And so it was kind of interesting, like, do we need a niche? That like kind of started to answer that question, right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as building a sense of community, though, that was fascinating. Being able to determine that, yes, you can, in this day and age, create a sense of community using social media and short form video social media, such as TikTok, Instagram, places like that. The finding was most people considered that more of a trustworthy relationship source than if they were to friend somebody on Facebook or whatnot. Because they're getting so much more of my personality and getting to know me through these short form videos than through random sporadic posts. It was really interesting because I would think that Facebook would be more trustworthy. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a lot more protective over who's my Facebook friend than who follows me on Instagram or TikTok. That's fascinating. So fascinating.
Exactly.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Wow. That's just blown my mind a little bit. And like, I don't know, did you then feel like that was part of like the whole influencer culture and the movement we've seen over the past many years, basically since Instagram, where people are following people and seeing more and more of their life and thinking that they're closer to them because they see more of their life through, stories or TikToks and things like that?
I do think it lends a lot to that. As a teacher, I consistently caution my students against believing what they see when it comes to things like TikTok or Instagram, because, I've said this before, my videos are curated, right? Like, you're not seeing the bad parts of me. You're seeing, and that's actually not true either, because I've cried on my TikTok before over things. But with TikTok generally, you're seeing all of the curated good parts, right? So you're not really getting to know a person, who they are inside, and whether or not they're a trustworthy person. I mean, I've even related it to things like the serial killer Ted Bundy, right? Like, he was charismatic, he was open, he was sweet, he was kind, and that's basically what everybody saw on the outside of him. So I still very highly caution against that. But also I found that, especially through the COVID years, we've needed to find ways to connect with each other as a people. And we have moved to these short form type video, connections. And it's strange to see us, evolve into that type of a situation, where before, had somebody reached out to me just randomly, hey, do you want to come on my podcast? I would have been like, I don't know you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we've almost all become like influencers in our own like little circles as well, I suppose. Even with, we were having this conversation the other day with some friends. We're talking about Be Real, and my friend's like, oh, everyone, love to friend you all on Be Real. And I'm like, like, there's no way I'm having another social media platform. I already have enough. My brain, there's already too much choice now, so no way. But my friends were like, what is Be Real? And it was really interesting because it is something that, it's like consistent. This is what I'm doing today. This is what, what I've been up to the last few hours. And it's like a snapshot of everyone's lives all at once. And you get to see people more often, even though you might be further apart. And obviously there's upsides and downsides to that, and you've got to weigh all that kind of stuff up. But it is very fascinating to see people's approaches nowadays to these new forms of social media, and be way more receptive to them as well, and just sharing a lot more, which is fascinating.
It is fascinating, but also it feels a little intrusive at the same time, right?
Oh yeah,
that everybody feels like they have to share every minute of their lives. I've seen with my students, I've seen them, it's hard. It's hard to see them, well, I thought he was, or I thought she was, right? And I got to know them really well and it's scary, to a point. But also, again, it's interesting to see that this is where our world is moving. I'm old enough to remember, I'm pretty old. I'm old enough to remember, how did I know if my friends were available to play? Well, I rode down the street and found where everybody had their bikes parked in whoever's front yard, right? Like that's how we knew where everybody was back in the day. And now it's find my friends. So,
and it is like, even like, I don't know, Australia always feels like at least a couple years behind the rest of the world, but we still did it as kids. When I'm only 20. Wow, that makes me feel, so young. But like when we were kids, and even actually my siblings still do it nowadays, because most of my siblings don't have phones. Most of them are actually small children. They'll go out and play on the street with the neighbors, and you'll be able to tell where they are, usually it's the highest density of bikes, because some child has left a bike on another random driveway or something silly.
Right.
But like, and we've nicknamed, I don't live at home, so when I drive back, I go, oh, we're going through gang territory, because it's, they congregate almost like a gang, and they watch you drive past, and they might realize who's in the car, and they'll wave, or they'll just keep watching you as you drive past into our parents' driveway. But it's fascinating to see, we go from something like that through to, sharing all our lives on Instagram stories, on TikTok, and even to things like Be Real. And it feels way more intrusive than, if I'm outside on the street, I actually kind of see where the kids are. And only the community gets to see it, not the whole world.
Right. And it is kind of strange. It's surreal that I'm talking to you in Australia, right? Which, by the way, I don't know if you saw the video, because TikTok's burying pretty much anything that they want to bury lately. But I actually had a friend in Australia send me a whole big box of Australian snacks that I'm going to take over to my dad's house, and we're going to give them a try. So, but it's interesting because without this platform, I would not have made these amazing connections.
Yeah.
Really good friend of mine in England. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of her town, right? Other good friends in France, people who I consider myself very good friends with in other states and other places. And I would never have had that without this community.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it is like, I came back from the US about 3 or 4 weeks ago as of recording, and was able to meet a whole bunch of friends of mine, and do a little bit of sharing of my culture, but experiencing American culture as well. And really, the last time I was in the US was 10 years ago, when I was 12 and I was on a family holiday, and we went skiing, and it was like this big thing that we'd never gone internationally. We all got passports for the first time, and it was such a novelty. But doing it alone, and with meeting up with all these people that I'd met online, it was fascinating, because it was like, oh wow, this is this amazing community that I have shared the last 3 years with, and it's real, it's tangible, because there are times where you look at the online communities and there is this like disconnect between, what I feel and how, how I feel things are going and how they actually are going.
Right.
Um, as you said, sharing, the internet almost asks you to share like a little bit too much of your life. Have you ever, I suppose we all have, but like, how do you deal with the whole, I actually really am just not interested in sharing anything today?
I just don't. If I don't feel like sharing today, I don't. And it's just plain and simple. I think
Wow.
for me, there's a lot of people who put way too much effort into, oh, I've got to share this number of videos because my
Mhm.
followers want me, right?
Yeah.
I've actually had days where I don't post, and I do have some very good friends that reach out to me and they're like, hey, I haven't seen you today. Are you okay? Um, but the beautiful thing about TikTok is a lot of times people don't know that you're gone
Yeah.
because your videos get pressed out on the FYP. Just I've had videos from 3 months ago start going viral again today. Like I'm getting weird notifications. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that video.
Yeah.
Um, so people don't know that you're gone unless you say something, right? I was down yesterday with a migraine headache, really
Hmm.
bad one. And I had posted, hey, I'm not feeling well. And my box this morning was just flooded with well wishes of people like, I hope you're feeling better. I hope this,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
this is what I do that works. So because I know that there is that content that I have that's still being pushed out there, um, and because I actually do care about my social media presence, I wouldn't
Hmm.
be building a channel if I didn't. But if there are days that I don't want to post, I just don't.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important to take that time.
Yeah, I suppose, and it is so annoying. I complain about this to pretty much anyone I speak to, especially here in Australia. I've been noticing recently a lot of people who end up blowing up get, signed to an agency. Not saying that an agency is bad, but get signed to an agency, and then their content becomes very manicured and scheduled and on time, and it feels like they've been like they almost feel like they're working themselves to the bone. It almost looks like, they
Mm-hmm.
keep pushing. And I look at that and I go, I'm so glad that I could take, a month off or, miss a deadline this week or, things like
Mm-hmm.
that or let life, I'm still at university. I've still, got other deadlines that are more important and more financially important to me
Pressing.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, especially when I'm paying my own university bills, it's, really, really important that I meet those deadlines before and prioritize what's important to me and what's important to my mental health. And it is always refreshing to hear when a content creator does go, I just don't feel the need to post when I'm not feeling, up to posting. And I don't know. It almost feels counterculture. I know it's become one of the more mainstream things to happen nowadays where like people are like, well, if I don't feel like posting, I'm not going to post. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, I don't know, it is very refreshing to hear.
Well, I call it the toothpaste principle, and here's why. When I was on TikTok for the very beginning, became friends with a really big teacher creator.
Hmm.
And this big teacher creator, I felt like was constantly trying to push content just to get the content out there. And I'm watching my feed one day, and this creator comes across, and they're literally having a conversation with the camera while brushing their teeth. And I thought, if I am ever at a point where I feel like I am such in a rut of creating content that I feel like I have to post while brushing my teeth,
Yeah.
then that's the sign, right? Like that's where that's too far.
Yeah.
That is the bridge
100%.
too far. Um, so the toothpaste principle, don't get to the point where you feel like you have to share your toothpaste.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Like I will definitely if someone wants to know my whole journey with brushing my teeth and toothpaste, more than happy to info up that kind of stuff because somehow in the back of my head I'm like, yeah, I've got a story about that. It might just be the journalist in me, but uh, but like on the other hand, I'm like, I really don't really want to be so sharing my toothpaste routine. Like that's just
Yeah,
not really, yeah.
right.
Um, so as you were growing, and obviously still teaching, did you decide to tell your students, or how did your students end up finding out that you were relatively large on TikTok?
I come across their FYP.
Oh no.
So here's the thing, I don't tell them, but if they find
Yeah.
me, they find me.
Yeah.
And the thing is everybody thinks TikTok is compartmentalized, right? They think that if you are somewhat like stuck in teacher TikTok, also your friends are teachers, that your content is only going to be fed to teachers, right?
Yeah.
It's not. If your content starts to go viral, TikTok's going to be like, cool, I need more information. So it's going to spread it to everybody. And so my students, I've had one or two videos do pretty well. And it ends up on their For You page. And it has happened at least once where somebody's been in class on their phone when they shouldn't be. And I've heard my voice coming from their phone,
Oh no.
which is the ultimate. I love that. That is the best, because I can just look at them and I'm like, oh, huh, which video is that? And then they look down, of course, and they're like 180 whatever thousand views. Like, miss, you're viral. And I'm like, I do okay.
I always love it when like a teacher will, you'll find out something amazing about a teacher, the whole perception of, teachers only live at school, which look, for some teachers it's arguable. But
I'm pretty much here all the time.
so was I as a kid. I don't think I really left school, and if I did, it was just to eat and go to sleep, and that was about it. I my end of high school was I think could only be described as crazy. But when you do find out like a teacher does something outside of the classroom, it's like, oh wow, the teacher almost like instantly becomes like interesting. And then like the way that the teacher reacts to it, especially when you react like really nonchalantly, it like becomes, oh, they're cool. Like they don't like, this is like normal for them. It's like, this
Yeah.
is, I don't know, the way that students react to teachers first having lives out of school, but then also being really successful outside of the classroom context is always really fascinating. And it is such a unique reaction because you don't really see those kind of reactions outside of the classroom either.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, it's wild.
I'm kind of in a separate situation though. My own children go to the school I teach at, so
Yeah.
their friends are my students. So, in a not creepy way, I've had a lot of these kids have been to my house.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I am who I am, who you see on TikTok, who you're talking to now, who I am in the classroom, and who I am at home. It is the same person.
Yeah.
I am 100% crazy all the time. I never change my personality. Like what you see is what you get. And so sometimes on the first day of school, I have kids that I've known since they were in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, right? And they're in my classroom and they're like, oh, I was so excited that you're my teacher. This is going to be awesome. And the other kids in the classroom are looking at me like, she has lost her mind.
Yeah.
And these kids are like, no, trust me. Like, she's just always like this. You get used to it.
Yeah.
So I'm in kind of a unique position where they don't learn new things about me because I'm pretty open.
Yeah.
There's not really a lot that they don't know.
Do you ever have to draw like extra boundaries, especially because your students do interact with you in person on a day-to-day basis, between, like this is stuff that happens in person and what happens online is completely different?
I really haven't had that situation.
Ah.
Most of the kids that my students are, or most of the kids that my kids are friends with, like my students, they're mostly like the honors kids that are quiet and really studious and like ready to focus.
Yeah.
And so it's never been a big deal, really. I did have a situation once where one of my daughter's friends was showing everybody where we live. Like
Right.
charging them a nickel a piece or whatever and giving them a tour. Which I put a stop to almost immediately. I'm like, look, not everybody at school needs to know where I live. It's
Yeah.
like, we don't need to do that. But Um, but in class, no, we have pretty strong, like, this is learning time, this is play time, this is fun time,
Yeah.
the boundaries are already set, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Speaking of back in the classroom, like most like burnt out year 12 kids coming through to the final stretches of school, I'm sure you have to deal with a lot of, let's just say, interesting not characters but interesting people who have spent 12 years at school and are maybe going slightly kooky. How do you handle, your students? Like, I know you've got a really unique way of like keeping your students really entertained and engaged with the content you're teaching.
Um, so how do I keep them focused and not pulling into
like,
what we in the United States call senioritis?
Oh, senioritis. I'm having senioritis. It's my final year of university. I've missed last week's classes because I only have 2 classes at the moment. And like I'm going to miss this week's because I'm sick. I'm like, wow, I regret not going to last week's classes because, I wanted to go and hang out with friends.
There's a couple of things. For one, I'm teaching a university level class. And so I treat them like university students, even though they're not. So that's number one. If you learn best by taking notes, take notes. If you don't, don't. But I do expect you to be like present and active in the discussion and not buried in your cell phone, right? But my big thing is my treasure box. Like, I have 17, 18-year-old kids and I have a treasure box, and these kids will fight for a sticker. They will just throw all hands down, man. Like, the sticker is on the line, we are in. And I have a birthday bucket, and we do birthday crowns, and like there's a whole gamut of things that I do. I think the biggest part of it though is just they know that I see them and that I want them to be successful. And so I do these quirky little things, which is fine. But they know ultimately that I'm here for them because I do those things.
Yeah.
So I think for me, just keeping them engaged and excited is like, you know what, guys, we even have a countdown. We're at 280 days right now to graduation. And tomorrow we're making a paper chain. So we can share one link. So, I do these things to keep them, you're almost there. Like, the road, it's like we can see the finish line, just to keep them engaged with their education as we're moving along. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating because we often do forget that people in their final year of high school are still children, and that, they still want, affirmation and praise and rewards for, doing good work. And the letter grade, or however your grading system works wherever you live, whatever grade you get is not the affirmation that people are necessarily looking for. Like, my GPA is not what I define myself on. What makes me happy is that the rewards I give myself for being good at what I do, and being good at what I do is not doing well in my subjects, is actually doing well in a whole bunch of other bits and pieces that I am a part of. So, and it's fascinating.
And the emphasis too should be on growth, right? Every student that comes into me at the beginning of the year has a potential to grow. And that's what we celebrate, is growth, not the letter grade. The letter grade is great at the end of the day. And unfortunately, that is the system that is used to measure student achievement for entrance to universities and different things. But in my classroom, I try to celebrate all of the growth and not just, oh, hey, look, you got an A, right? Like, oh my gosh, last week you didn't know how to define a theme. And this week, not only are you defining it, but you're writing it and you're citing it and you're doing all the things you need to do. So for me, it's more about the growth and the learning process and not necessarily about the subjective letter grade.
It reminds me of when I was like in 11th grade, we had a particularly difficult chemistry unit that we did. And every student before us had done it. It was discontinued after us, fortunately, because it was really, really like just beyond hard. And we did this experiment. It was for an assignment, and then we had to do a whole bunch of math to calculate the percentage of alcohol in the wine that we were testing, that we didn't know. And it was fascinating to sit there and watch as groups of people, because we all worked in like groups of about 4 groups of people, celebrate at like different times for like achieving a goal together, because it wasn't about, the letter grade. It was actually getting through all the calculations that were required and the insanely like mind-bending backward stuff, because chemistry is just confusing half the time.
Right.
And, just getting through it all and then getting out the other side and going, oh, actually, this now makes sense. And I know exactly why this happens. And I know exactly what went wrong, 10 steps ago. And, oh, wow, I now have, not just understanding, but a little bit of mastery here. And reflecting on it, it was like this infectious happiness that spread through, the classroom. Admittedly, it was like over 4 weeks, because we all ended up going at such different paces. My poor chemistry teacher, I think she went slightly crazy that month, just trying to keep
I
on
would
top
say
of us.
any high school chemistry teacher has a requirement to be slightly crazy.
Oh yeah, no, they were all like baseline nutty, but I think she went like a little bit. She went a little bit further, and we ended up having a replacement chemistry teacher for a couple of weeks, and she's half Singaporean, half Australian. I really hope I get that correct. I believe so. Anyway, she's like a kind of different kind of nutty, where she was like obsessed with like the content, but then would turn around and tell you like the most crazy stories from her university days about like the sexist mass spectrometer and things like that, that just, things that obviously were a little silly, but like really helped us remember concepts, because it was like, oh, this is tied to like a funny story that our teacher told us, which, seems a little bit weird, but now I'm at university and I go, oh yeah, that thing definitely happens,
Right.
I have to give kudos to all teachers out there, because I don't think I could be able to teach. Like I tutored for a couple of years, and I don't think I could be able to teach people concepts, because there's a severe difference between tutoring someone and teaching someone. And teaching, you've just got to, it's such a harder thing to learn something, and it is amazing to watch teachers work and really communicate concepts to people of all skill levels.
Well, and that's how I feel so as a high school teacher, I feel like I don't actually teach anything new. I feel like I refine concepts. The lower grade teachers, the elementary teachers, pre-K teachers, man, they take rough material and form it into something. And they teach those kids what a letter is, how to write those letters, how to make those letters into words and those words into sentences. Yeah. I don't know how they do that. Personally, the L teachers, to me, they rule the world. I can refine concepts. They teach, I refine. Yeah. And that is 100% going to be my stance on this for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I think especially like kindergarten teachers are like gods. They turn these kids from, kids who are obsessed with just playing and what's the next thing in front of them, to kids who love learning, new words and sounds and letters and new ways to do things. And it is fascinating. I've watched, how many now? It will be, it's 10 take 2 minus me as well, so it's 7. I've watched 7 of my siblings go through kindergarten, and it is all of them have turned from kids who aren't necessarily super interested in learning through to lifelong learners. Like I don't think any of my siblings would be uninterested in learning things in the future, and it is just amazing to watch. It is so cool.
I would agree with that. One of the focuses in my classroom is that these are not English skills; these are life skills. We just practice them in English class. Yeah. things like, you are 100% annotating everything I say right now. You're annotating me for truth. You're annotating me to be able to quote me back at some point. You're annotating me to see if you believe in the same things that I believe in. Some things you maybe don't understand, you're trying to take mental note of that to go back and check on it later. You annotate your world. And that's just something we practice in English class. And so many people think that annotation is just an English skill. And, I hate to annotate. Well, I mean, did you go to a restaurant and take a food order the other day? Because I guarantee you annotated that menu before you made a decision. And that always blows my students' minds. They're like, "Oh, I did."
It's like, oh no, I actually learned something. The whole this whole thing of like, I'm too cool for school, and then you realize that like you wouldn't be able to do half the things you're able to do without school, and it's like, oh wait, okay, well maybe school's good then.
Right.
So we mentioned briefly your family and their reaction, and obviously your kids seem to have like a really great sense of what works well and what doesn't work well on TikTok. How have they, as you've grown, how have they, reacted and interacted with your online presence?
None of my children follow my account.
Yeah, that's just rude. Like, come on.
I actually posted a video not too long ago with my daughter. She was teasing me. This is my youngest. She's now 15. She was teasing me. She's like, "Mom, you don't really have, at the time it was 40,000 followers. You just created 40,000 email accounts and you're following yourself." She just teases me. My kids tease me like that. I do have one daughter who does have an account. She's trying to build it now. She's now started following me and asking me for TikTok advice, which I think is great. I'm not too cool for, she's not too cool for me anymore, which is fun. But for the most part,
sandwich making? Wait a second.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. That was amazing.
She's like, side note, I'm in college, so all I have is bread and cheese.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's trying to build her TikTok presence, which I think is amazing. But my other kids, they'll like my content occasionally, if it comes on their For You page, but they don't follow me. They don't, and unless they're in a video with me, they don't really, they have no interest in being part of it. Same with my husband. He does have a TikTok account. He will occasionally like or repost one of my videos if I ask him to. But getting him to be in videos with me is awfully difficult. We still haven't shot off that rocket. We've been under fire danger here, so we haven't been able to. But we also, like, I bought him some mustard flavored ice cream to try in a video, and he has not yet done that either. So I really have to pin him down to be a part of it. But they just kind of let me do me, and that's fine.
Your husband reminds me of just like my dad in general. Not my dad is just like, he's the most elusive man ever. I rang my mother yesterday and I was like asking about, we've got a weed infestation in our backyard. We've got this particular, any Australian will know and cringe at the name bindies. So we have bindies through our whole backyard, and these prickles that really just are just not fun. And I was rang my mother because I was like, maybe mum knows what I should be doing. And she's like, no, just ring your father. I'm like, isn't he busy? And she goes, no, he's just in the next room. And so when I rang dad, he's like, oh, you've been transferred. I'm like, yep. I just wish there was a transfer button between the two of you, and it'd be easier to get a hold of you both. Because dad's notorious for not picking up his phone, and he works a lot. So he's
is your dad is he an engineer or in the math or science field by any chance?
He is an engineer.
That's it. There it is. But it is the engineer personality. Actually, I don't.
That explains why none of my uncles pick up their phones, because they're all engineers. No way. This just explains way too much. Like, they're all like, my dad's a mechanical one of my uncles is civil and the other one's a surveyor. And all kind of like engineering, maths field, terrible at picking up their phones.
Yeah, my husband's an electrical engineer in aerospace. So he is definitely on that, no pun
Yeah.
intended, but like this other plane of
Yeah.
existence. So
Yeah, no, and my father also like on the side works in the military, so it's like this whole thing of, okay, so when he's doing his military stuff, we can't ring him because his phone is just not on him because that's
mhm.
that's the way it works.
Yeah, my husband has some government contracts as well. That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The government stuff. I have a couple of friends who work even just as like in the civil service, and they were telling us about like the restrictions they have around their phones and what they can
Mhm.
use. In fact, one of my favorite Australian content creators at the moment on TikTok, Brie Jean, she's from Canberra. She used to work in the public service, and she would always talk about she always knew that the public service had found like her TikToks because there would be lots of shares but no likes because they're not really
Mhm.
like there's still that like government worry about
Mhm.
TikTok and stuff like that. So it's always very interesting to see the way that people in the government work around and work
Right,
with TikTok. It's
right.
fascinating. Um, and so you've now finished your masters. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
That felt it was getting towards the end, and I felt like you had senioritis as well. um, but like, how once you'd finished your masters, was there like more push to share that research further than where you shared it for your master's program?
There's really not. I know that that disappoints a lot of people. I have zero desire to move on to a doctoral program or a research program of any kind. Um, I have a friend on TikTok. They're actually in their doctoral program. It's Let's Do Doc Research. I think you may follow them. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they keep bugging me. They're like, "Man, you got to do your PhD." I'm like, "No."
No, yeah.
Yeah, I have zero desire to move that farther. Love my students, love the classroom. Like I said, I'm a career. So
Yeah.
I spent 16 years in the corporate field working with adults. I am now in the classroom. I will die in the classroom. I don't intend to go to admin. I don't intend to go into any other like this is where I'll stay.
Yeah.
So pushing myself to do more research or do more PhD, anything, it's just not in the cards for me. Just not my love language.
Yeah. Oh, look, it totally makes sense. PhD is like a huge effort. I have had a teacher of mine who started her PhD when I started high school and is only finishing it at the end of this year. So that's what, like 8 or 9 years ago.
Mhm.
Admittedly, in the middle was a pandemic. She was still teaching full time the whole time, so studied a lot of it part time.
Right.
And hers was like a really high work PhD. She's a conductor, and she was anyway, I won't talk. I don't know whether I'm supposed to talk much about the PhD. I don't know whether I know too much or too little. So but it was interesting. I caught up with her at my siblings' musical earlier this year, and I said, "Oh, hey, when can I finally call you doctor?" And she turned around and it was like, "Soon, soon. I'm so glad for that to being finished. I'm never doing that kind of thing again."
Right. Right.
And it's the whole thing of when you have like a family as well. It's like, I could be, studying and working if like I had like nothing, no other like home responsibilities. But, when you've got children and a partner and, pets and a house, like a full house to look after, it's like, well, this is
Right.
just a little ridiculous. Um,
No, I agree. It's too much.
yeah. It's sometimes I look at it and I go, I don't even know how like people who are like single and are, living alone have, the time to do a PhD. I barely have time to wash the dishes sometimes. Um
Yeah.
um looking towards the future, what do you kind of want to use your TikTok presence for?
I've been thinking about that a lot lately because I'm not really sure. It started off as something silly and then it kind of grew to this platform. And like I said, I've got this medium to small platform that I've been working with. My biggest hope is that we can maybe start making some noise in education, especially in America,
Mhm.
with educational reform and the way that education is seen here.
Yeah.
Um, I'm in Arizona. We're number 48 in the country as far as spending per pupil, not on the good side, like on the bottom side
Yeah,
of
yeah.
things. Um, I I'm not one of those teachers that's going to whine and cry about teacher pay. I'm not. I really want to see more resources going towards our students and going towards their education and their futures, and less resources going towards, oh, dare I say this out loud, towards political agendas.
Yeah.
Um, I would really like education to get back in the hands of capable, educated teachers. Um, that our whole goal is to, serve these kids. So things like standardized testing and scripted curriculums, stuff like that, that just really, in my opinion, doesn't serve a student.
Mhm.
Um, my goal is to just try to start making some noise on that front and see what we can do as far as real educational reform and not controlled educational reform. That's my hope.
Yeah.
That's the big goal. Obviously, the small goal is I want a TikTok cake this year. That's the goal.
Yeah.
I want them
Uh,
to send me a cake and a hoodie. That is my goal.
yeah. Cake and a hoodie sounds amazing. TikTok, if you could send everyone a cake and a hoodie, I would love that too. Um, but yeah, 100%. It's the whole like going back to let the experts do what they're experts in, kind of thing. I get really frustrated, not even just in education, but like in all areas where like, oh, our funding's suddenly been cut. Oh, why has it been cut? Oh, because politics. I was like, that's not a
Mhm.
reason. It's like saying your dog ate your homework. Yes, that
Right.
something, yes, something's happened out of our control, but the reason why it's happened really doesn't make sense. You fed the dog the homework. Why is this happening? This analogy is getting out of
Right.
hand very quickly, but yeah.
No. I understand exactly what you're saying because it does feel like there's way too many people in the pot, right?
Yeah.
I think the first thing that needs to happen in the United States is maybe have a Secretary of Education that has actually been in education.
Hmm.
That could be the number one thing. Like maybe somebody who prerequisite is they've had to have taught in the classroom for some time. Um, Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
Our current Secretary of Education has been in the classroom, but it was a long time ago. Previous Secretary of Education, we don't need to talk about her.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of rules and laws being made about education, about classrooms, about teachers, about
Hmm.
content by people who have never served a day in the classroom.
Yeah.
And that needs to change.
I think the other thing that a lot of people who have, like, even just general people who have been, had been to school years and years ago, even myself, I go back to my primary school because that's where my siblings go to. And the classroom and the approaches and the learning techniques are so much more different than what I learned. Admittedly, I was basically living in pseudo 90s, but, um, that it is so different to and education evolves relatively quickly, and there is this like belief that education is one of those things that just doesn't change, and I actually want to almost argue that like education changes the fastest out of like
Well, and
all like
education is the forefront of everything, right? Because
yeah,
without education and educators, we wouldn't have politicians, police officers, firefighters, doctors, lawyers. Like they wouldn't exist. And I think a lot of it too, you say that, you go into your siblings' classrooms and it's very different. Yes, because technology and everything is evolving. There's so much more that we know about the human mind and how it
yeah,
works and mental health disorders and autism and all of those things that, I have to differentiate every day in my classroom for every student so that they get the best learning opportunity, right?
Yeah,
But
100%.
then I'm mandated to give a standardized test. I have to differentiate, but I'm mandated to standardize their testing. And it doesn't make sense to me.
No, not at all. And it's like it is frustrating. Like standardized testing exists, I'm guessing in most places in the world. It exists here in Australia.
Mhm.
And not that all standardized testing, we have what's called the NAPLAN, which is the National, I don't know. Anyway, it stands for something. It's an acronym. And you take it in
Mhm.
years 3, 5, 7, and 9. And it's like, I think it's about 4 tests over 3 days. And it is pretty much it's all consuming for students. And there was a period of time, I think, especially when I was like in late primary school, early high school, where schools were defining their performance based on those NAPLAN scores. And somehow it got shut down very, very quickly. But there is still this whole thing of like NAPLAN scores are the be all and the end all. My parents actually don't care about NAPLAN scores because they look at the grades and have a chat to the teachers about how that works. Because my parents have been burnt before by standardized testing, very clearly, and they, they have a look at it, and it's just like a benchmark of like how are you performing compared to your peers. Are you up to standard? If you're not, why not? If you're above standard, well, then how can we extend you further theoretically? Or, is your teacher extending you further? Part of the reason why I moved schools between primary school and high school, because we don't do middle school, is that my parents didn't believe that I was being extended enough. So I ended up going to a different school, which extended me further. And I am really always very grateful that they made that decision. But, standardized testing almost had nothing to do with that. It just was, we know he's performing at higher than average. How can you extend him further so that he's being challenged? Because at the moment, we don't think he's being challenged. And it was like this whole conversation that, and I love those conversations. Those kind of conversations, I think, are like some of the most valuable, thought-provoking conversations that people end up having. But then you have the other mentality, the flip side of the coin of who has the highest scores. I had a discussion with my parents the other day talking about the university I go to, and I was talking about how the university is in trouble because if they continue to do things the way they currently do them, they're going to actually lose out on students because they're actually not taking care of the students. And my father turned around and goes, actually, no one really cares about how they take care of the students. I'm like, no, that's one of the first things I look for. It's like, well, no, because this research shows that people actually look to more scores and standardized testings and average grades rather. And it was just this whole like terrible, oh, wait a second, people care about that stuff when it happens.
Well, and it's true too that you look at the standardized test scores, and I don't know about Australia, I can't speak to your standardized testing standards, but here in Arizona and in the United States, there are whole industries developed around teaching students how to take those tests.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
If the test was actually a measurement of achievement, then you would not be able to have a course designed on how to take the test. And that's the part that bothers me the most, right? Albert Einstein actually once said that if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will fail every time. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give every student a standard test across the board for all of them. We're asking them all to climb trees, and some of them are fish.
Yeah.
And so it's just, but if I were to ask that student to do the same thing in a different way, they would be successful. So it's not right, number one, that we have industries that are built around getting you to pass a test. And number two, it's not right that we're standardizing an educational benchmark when we have to differentiate what we're teaching.
So. I think it's just predatory, to be honest. It's mildly disgusting. We had to, so the school system I went through, which has changed the year after we were the final year of this particular school system, everyone took a standardized test, and then that was how you would like weight the subjects for your final score, and you got a score between like 1 and 25, and 1 was the highest and 25 was like the lowest C- you could get, because everyone had to pass. And we spent months in these seminars and courses learning how to take this standardized test. And don't get me wrong, it really did teach me how to take a test. And I now am really much better at analyzing what the question wants me to answer and how the question wants me to answer it. But that's pretty much the only thing it taught me. And it's not really useful outside of an educational standpoint, because I can always go and ask follow-up questions of the person I'm trying to answer a question of in the real world. Like, it's not a reflection of the real world.
The real world doesn't offer you ABCD choices.
No, yes. And the real, even in university, it's like, I'm really lucky. I haven't taken a test in university, but like, my assignments in university are, and partly because I study journalism, are very subjective. So you've got to, understand who's marking you and how they would prefer things written, much like an editor at a newspaper would, and then adapt to that. And that's not how like standard, like a robot would mark. And so, you don't learn anything out of that. I haven't really used that test taking skills at all since leaving high school.
Right. Exactly. And that is the frustration.
Oh yeah, 100%. Have you guys seen positive movements in that direction at all?
Not really. I don't know if you know much about the United States and our political climate, but we're crazy.
Yes, I know you're crazy.
Yeah, and so no, you've got the left fighting against the right. You've got one calling the other names. It's definitely not moving in a positive direction yet, but I'm hopeful.
Oh, amazing. Well, on that hopeful note, thank you so much, Tamara, for coming on Content and Capable. I really love chatting to you. Your insights have been so amazing, and it's so interesting to chat to a teacher about their use of social media. It's not something that often necessarily happens.
There's quite a few of us. It's been fun talking to you too, and the best of luck to you on your interview. If a recommendation from a teacher in Arizona in the United States will help you at all, please let me know. I'd be happy to write one.
Amazing. Awesome. Where can people find you on the internet?
I am on TikTok. I teach English. I am on TikTok. It's at teaching_Mrs. H, and also Instagram, same username.
Amazing. And has there been anything that you've been reading, watching, playing, consuming that you wanted to plug?
No, not really. I mean, I just am. I am being who I am. So I do have a link list on my page. There's a few things there that are my favorites or books or whatever. But
yeah,
I just live. I just in the moment.
I love that. Listeners, if you don't know where to find me, or you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at sam.the.journalist, and on Twitter at samobjournalist. This week I'm going to plug Bluey. I know season 3 has just dropped in the US. I know there's been actually a little bit of controversy with that one in terms of Disney did a bit of censoring, and us Australians are mildly upset. But
I hadn't heard that, so
yeah, there's talk of a vasectomy that they cut, and some other generally not like the most prim and proper humor that is very uniquely Australian, as well as there's a whole episode that's been cut. I'm not quite sure which one, but people are like, oh no, but this teaches like a really important life lesson for kids. But Disney's like, well, no, it's too sensitive. So
again, political climate, we're crazy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
apologies.
it's great. But like, yeah, I definitely suggest going and checking out Bluey, regardless of Disney and their craziness. Bluey is just an amazing cartoon. It is probably one of my favorites. I actually went and watched it the other day while I was sick because it was just something fun. And they're like 7-minute episodes. So, really short. They're like little snacks. Amazing. Thank you so much, Tamara, for coming on. I really loved chatting with you. It's been amazing. Thank you for listening to Content and Capable. You can follow the podcast socials at Content, the letter N, Capable on Instagram and Twitter. You can send an email to contentandcapablepod@gmail.com. Please give us a review on iTunes or Spotify to help others know that you love this podcast. The art was done by Opia. You can follow them at opia_art_. Opia is spelled OPIA. Feel free to message them about making art for your project. Our music was written, recorded, and edited by Isabel Strauss-Riggs. You can find Izzy at Kane_I, that's I is in the body part, on Instagram and Twitter, and on YouTube at KaneI with no spaces. Feel free to message her about making music for your project or editing your podcast.
What would you do if there was a terrifying prophecy about you?
Or you had to go on a perilous quest to save a friend.
Or everything you loved was in danger and the world was about to end?
Whoa, slow down, Charlie. You know what to do when all that crazy stuff happens, right?
Call Ghostbusters?
No, you listen to Of the Eldest Gods.
Right. Sorry, Ray. Y'all can listen to our podcast about the Rick Riordan books.
We'll cover each chapter and talk about some of the fucked up mythological context.
And we'll probably get cursed by Zeus.
Let's hope that doesn't happen this season.
Catch Oteg on all your podcast platforms.
And eat some blue food while you listen.
Wish us luck while we survive the apocalypse.
Charlie.
What?
Content and Capable is a podcast all about answering the question, how do you adult? Don't forget to rate and review, and I will see you next Monday for another episode.
Dave X Media.